welcome back to my channel. In today's video I want to make a miniature fairy garden. I have this vitamin jar from my kids' vitamins. This will be the fairy house. This time I'm going to make it a little bit different. Usually I'm just using my plain white clay and then make the sculpture out of it and then paint it later. For this project I'm going to more already color the clay with acrylic color and then make the sculpture, so it will not be that hard to paint it later because it will be tinier than most of my fairy houses and I just want to make it simpler. So I will mix first all my colors that I need for this, and what I'm going to do is I will mix first my primary colors, so like white, black, yellow, red and blue, and then I will mix that colors together to have more shades of different colors. So first my white, I think I would need a lot of that, and as usual I'm using titanium dioxide. You can use white acrylic paint like this one. I just like to use this because it's cheaper and you need less to make it white. Here I have mixed all my colors, and I didn't just make the primary colors because like brown needs more pigment, so I made brown and also green and purple and pink, but the other colors I will mix then later. Now I'm gluing on a little aluminum foil ball that I shaped for the flower later, and I'm gluing it on using hot glue. Okay, the plan is I will glue this with my PVA glue and then I will make like stones and glue them on here. But of course I don't want my stones all in the same color. That's why I'm mixing up different shades of gray. Not 50 shades of gray. So now I have a few different shades of gray. But I just realized that if I'm going to glue on the stones, it will be smarter to make a door and the window first, so then I can glue on the stones around it. So now I'm gonna store my grays in a container first so they don't dry, and I'm going to make some shades of brown to make the wooden door and window. And I'm going to mix them together, but not until they're totally combined, so I can create like a wood texture-ish whatever. The method that I'm using is I'm gonna roll and fold and roll and fold until I have thin wood vein texture. So I'm gonna put this aside because I think it's a little bit too much and it's just something good, like good texture-ish, and we can use it later. So for the door, here I'm cutting out the door using a scissor because I find it's the easiest and cleanest way to make a shape, a flat shape, and I just have to adjust how big I want the door. I think this is good for the door. And now I will make the frame for the door using this excess clay thing. Maybe I can also make the window right away. So for the window I kind of want to make a square window because I usually just always do the rounded windows. I think it will good look with this wood texture. For the door frame, I'm using brown clay and try to make something like a twine. And now I'm gonna glue on this part. Here I have my disgusting PVA glue, because they sell it like this, and this is the thick one. I have like thinner PVA glue, but yeah, for different purpose I use different brands, and for this kind I like thicker glue more, because it's like stick and doesn't slip off. That makes sense. Hopefully. So this is for the window. And now I'm gluing on the door. And then the ring inside here, and I'm going to glue this on here, you know, like that. Looks quite cute, I think. And then making a little handle. I'm just gonna make it brown, because later on I will probably paint it gold, so it doesn't really matter. Here I'm scoring some lines using a clay tool to make it look like wood planks. And now I'm making some stones, just making little balls using the gray clay. And to glue on the stones on the glass jar, I'm going to cover the glass jar using some PVA glue, and then put the stones on the jar, but try to make them as close as possible, because after they dry they will shrink, and then they have gap between them. So you closer you make them, so the smaller will the gap be. And to be honest, this part was really satisfying. Now I'm trying to combine some yellow and orange shades together to make like a gradation of yellow and orange, and then I will make the flower pattern out of it. And now I'm using a scissor to cut out some flower pattern. I don't really have a pattern to do that, I am just doing it free-handed. As you can see, I didn't have enough material to make the flower petal, so I just pushed some excess material together and cut out the last petal. Now I'm scoring some lines, again using my clay tool to make the petal looks more realistic and have some texture, and flatten out the edges, and again making some lines for the texture. Now I'm putting a generous amount of glue, PVA glue, on top of my glass bottle to glue on the flower petals and make it like a flower rooftop for the fairy house. As you can see here, I'm lifting the edges of the flower petals a little bit so they look more natural. And now I'm using a wire and twine it to make the flower stamp. And here I'm using some green clay and try to push it around the wire to make the stamp, and trying my best to flatten it out, but it wasn't really easy, so I did it the best I can. Here I'm making the sepal of the flower using some green clay. And adding some texture using a clay tool. Gluing the sepal, the stamp and the flower together. Using some more green clay to make a leaf, and this flower and this leaf is actually totally just imagination. I don't know if this flower even exists in real life, but it's just my imagination and it looks like a flower, so I'm just doing it like that. And I'm using a clay tool, or some people call them fondant tools, to make the bones of the leaf and score some texture of the leaves into the leaf, and gluing the leaf onto the flower stamp. Now I'm making some grass to cover up the end of the flower stem so it just doesn't look so naked, and give it some more hold for strength. Here I'm making some little flowers for decoration, and I cannot exactly explain how I made it. I just used my clay tools and shaped it until I get the flower shape, and glue them onto the fairy house. Now I'm making a little dwarf or gnome to sit in the fairy garden later. And this is really simple. I just used some skin color to make a nose and two little hands. And now I'm using this gray and the same technique as the wood texture to make the beard, so it has some white and grayish inside of it. And using my tool to score like hairs for the beard. Now I'm making a head using blue clay and just form it with my fingers. Now I'm making some little shoes using brown clay. Now I'm making the trunk using some green clay, just making a little green ball so it looks like he has green clothes on. And then making two little arms and poking in a hole using a clay tool to put the hands inside later. And now glue the hands on and basically just glue all the parts together so you have your little gnome. Now I'm making some mushrooms. Here I have the green clay for wheat, and I'm putting some PVA glue on top of it and then just punched holes with the sharp clay tool to make a grassy texture. And here I'm using some aluminum foil to shape the mushrooms. So they're not fully out of clay, but I'm just making them out of aluminum foil and then cover them with clay. And here I'm using the white clay for the mushroom stamp and just covering the aluminum foil. I'm using a clay tool to give it the mushroom texture underneath the cup, and some red clay to make the mushroom cup, and then just glue it onto the aluminum foil. And last, I'm gluing on all the mushrooms to the grass. After everything dried properly, it's painting time. And when my clay pieces dried, they had a little bit of cracks, and I added some PVA glue to fix the cracks. And now I'm painting the pieces to add some more details. Maybe you will ask, like, why did you color the clay if you're still gonna paint it? But I like to use acrylic paint to add some depth and some highlight to the pieces and giving it some more details so it looks more realistic. But it's really just optional. You can do it if you like it, or you can just leave it. Yeah, here I'm giving the gnome some stripes so it looks like the clothes are striped. And you know, just some little details here and there to make it look more realistic and more finished. Here I'm adding a little bit of white with a almost dry brush just to make the beard has some dimension and has like white highlights. And here comes the mistake that I made. So before we glued on the stones, the label was red, right? So, and after the stones dried and they shrink, as I said before, but the label then become see-through into the little gaps. And now I had to color them with some dark gray. So to prevent it, it will be smarter to just take off the label or just color the label gray before you glue on the stones. And now I'm adding a little bit of gold to the edges of the flower petals, but that's optional. I just want, you know, like a little bit of magic touch there. And adding some white dots on the mushrooms. And last, after all the paint dry, I am finishing the pieces with some varnish to add more shine and made them hold longer from moisture and all those stuff. So here I have all my materials that I'm going to use to make my fairy garden. I have this base kit that I bought in a DIY shop. It's basically a container, but my brother drilled some holes in it for drainage, and then I'm going to use this plastic bag for the sides so the soil will not leak out of the sides. And here I have my soil and the art pieces that we made, and some plants that I'm gonna use, and some stones for decoration. First, I'm going to add the soil into the container. This is quite messy, that's why I'm doing it outside, but the lighting is not so good. I'm gonna arrange the plants in here right now. This is a cactus and a succulent, and these are basically a spider plant, I believe, and it's another baby plant. They will grow bigger, but after they are too big for this container, I will plant them into another planter. But for now, I'm just gonna leave them here for decoration. And this is a mini plant. And I don't know what the name is in English, but yeah, this is mini and also still a baby. This is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it gave you some inspiration or idea. And if you have some questions or tips or ideas for me, please let me know in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next video. Bye!